Mystara has no shortage of villainy when you need somebody to throw at your players, from the Master's world-spanning plans for domination, to Thar's long-term plans for domination, to Skarta's poorly conceived plans for dominations, and Bargle, who just likes to kill people in ways that amuse him the most. We've got a lot of villains. At least until 2nd edition, when a huge number of villains were put out to pasture. But we've got a new baddie during this time period. Originating in Voyage of the Princess arc, this sinister creature has been the villain of both versions of Mystara, as well as the end boss of the video game. So who is this Mistress of Mayhem? I'm Mr. Welch, welcome to Mystara, and get ready to commit the oldest sins in the newest kinds of ways. Synn is probably best remembered as the boss monster of the Capcom beat-em-up video games, where she appears as a red dragon. This was actually due to a technical problem because a black dragon on a black background looked awful. This was a non-canonical appearance, and while she is very much considered one of the best-known bad guys of Mystara, we're not going to count that one. Officially, she first appeared in Dragon Magazine 154 in the Princess Arc series in a cameo in dragon form that remained nameless until she appeared as the Nithian Kufuri in Dragon 162, who offered to help Prince Haldemar deal with some pesky Haldonic knights while in the Hollow World. She appeared as a spoiled princess who did her best to get her hands on the skyship, while also demanding to be pampered by the prince and his crew. She actually physically appeared in Haldemar's cabin, along with a pet panther and a goblin lackey whose only job was to fan her as she lounged. She revealed her true nature in Dragon 163, where she transformed from the princess into her true draconic form, and swore vengeance on Haldemar for not giving her what she wanted. Synn, in game terms, is a greater night dragon, a form of undead servant to the entropic immortals. They resemble dragons in every way, but they do have some noticeable differences. They can plane shift through total darkness to realms directly under the control of the Sphere of Entropy. Though in the rules it says the Plane of Entropy. Again, the spheres of powers are schools of philosophy, not physical places. But they can dominate another plane almost entirely, so that's probably what they meant. Their breath weapon is a paralyzing darkness, as they prefer to torment rather than kill. The breath weapon counts as total darkness for their plane shift ability. Their physical attacks paralyze like a ghoul's touch. Greater dragons can wrap their wings around a target, which traps their souls on the night dragon's home plane, which allows the dragon to possess the victim's body. They also possess the ability to cast numerous spells, with the greater dragons almost the match for some wizards in terms of power. You need magic weapons to hurt a night dragon as well. Casting Raise Dead on a lesser night dragon kills it outright, while this merely injures a greater night dragon. Both forms of night dragon can be turned by clerics. And being caught in direct sunlight will kill a night dragon of either category. Synn is one of, if not the, most powerful night dragon in Mystara. She's a servant of Thanatos and answers directly to him. Her only goal is to bring chaos and instability to the world, and she's willing to do anything to further that goal. No one knows what kind of dragon she was before becoming a night dragon, but it was one that did enough evil to draw the attention of the immortal patron of death. She is cruel, vindictive, and sadistic. She won't kill someone if she can make them suffer instead. She's a huge fan of polymorph, especially if she can make her victim useful to her as a spy or something similar. She will slaughter minions or crew for her own pleasure, but usually won't directly harm the target of her ire if she can help it. As Thanatos' chief agent on the prime material plane, Synn is only involved in the grandest of schemes. Suffering is her trademark, and the more sadistic torture she can arrange, the happier she is. She famously lured the Princess Ark through a time storm, delaying them from rescuing an ally for over 3 decades, only to deliver their ally, now elderly and broken, directly to them to show the price of their failure. Her sadism often borders on pettiness. No amount of suffering is too small for her entertainment. She will gladly enchant lowly guards or servants out of nothing more than petulant boredom. This is her weakness, as her desire to see creatures suffer will often delay her plans while she toys with them. Synn's efforts to torment Prince Haldemar of Hakan was nearly successful. Through her interference, Alphatia and the Haldonic Order nearly broke out in open warfare. If that had happened, then Thanatos proper might have been drawn into the fray and open war would have resulted. Fortunately, Empress Ariadne's legendary diplomatic skills proved to be up to the task, and the crisis was averted. This was not deemed a failure for Synn, as her efforts damaged diplomatic ties between all involved greatly. After her efforts with Alphatia was done, Synn turned her attentions to Glantri. With the events of Wrath of the Immortal, the entropic power saw an opening in that fractious nation. The war between Alphatia and Glantri saw numerous leaders perish, one of which was Prince Volospin of Black Hill, along with most of his immediate family. With the nation scrambling to replace their fallen leaders, the little-known Dolores, daughter of Dorothy Hillsbury of Finswick, came forward with the claim that she was Volospin's illegitimate daughter, and thus the rightful princess of Black Hill. As her mother died during the war, she was the immediate heir. Due to Black Hill being destroyed by the Great Meteor, the principality shifted to Finswick, and she was given full control of what was left of Black Hill's resources. In the 1005 timeline, Black Hill wasn't annihilated by the meteor, but Prince Volospin was assassinated regardless when Alphatia hired multiple renegade groups, already established in Glantri to try and kill as many princes as possible. Volaspin's demise is officially reported as being due to one of the many Glantrian secret societies, but other rumors reported he was instead killed by a great dragon. Volaspin's brother is charged with his murder, and despite clear evidence of his innocence, the man is found guilty and executed. The man's lack of magic made him an easy scapegoat for the already shaken wizards. Dolores, of course, is the polymorph Synn, who has now been tasked with destabilizing the already fragile Glantri. After the war, 2 of its princes were dead, and the balance of power was already shifting. Her plan was helped by the war, and got an unexpected boost with the disappearance of Etienne d'Amberville. Killing Volaspin was easy, but getting allies in the Parliament was another thing entirely. But Synn's power gave her an edge, as Prince Jager von Drachenfell's obsession with dragons gave her an opportunity to manipulate one of the most powerful princes in the nation. Her first goal was to begin eliminating anyone who could expose her, which were mostly minor nobles that no one would miss. Then she started pushing through highly controversial decisions that were sure to cause nothing but chaos in Glantri. She elevated High Doge Cole to the rank of prince, and left him in charge of what is now the Great Crater. She did everything in her power to punish the elves of Erewhon, her chief rival. Cole's humanoids started raiding and poisoning the lands of the elf, and Synn used her power as Glantri's up-and-coming new princess to block any efforts the elves tried to stop the humanoid raids or get assistance in rebuilding their province. The excuse they always got was everyone else was rebuilding as well. Helping you would be unfair to the other provinces. Synn's plans are working better than she could have possibly imagined. With the Erewhon elves in turmoil, she's turning her attention to reinstating the death penalty for all clerics. While the clerics are there to stop the plagues that have ravaged the land after the war, they're a threat to her with her undead status and all. The wizards are already distrustful of clerics, making this effort far easier than she expected. She is turning the other provinces against Erewhon, and she wants to drive the elves out of Glantri and into the war-ravaged regions of Darrican. In the Wrath timeline, Alphine is a shattered husk overrun by Shadow Elves. In the 1005 timeline, the Shadow Elves created New Angmar from the Broken Lands, but the 2 elven nations are in a tense standoff out of distrust. A large number of Erewhon elves welcomed back into Alphine would anger the Shadow Elves, who were denied entry into the elven homeland, causing a diplomatic crisis between the 2 nations. With Glantri's already fractured system of government, Synn would have an easy time of driving out the Erewhon elves, and then corrupting the remaining Glantrians into her bidding. If she ever discovered the Radiance, then the world would be in a danger not seen since the Great Reign of Fire, especially since her patron wants to wipe out all life in the multiverse. But Synn has gained enemies, some of them as powerful as she is, and one of them even dwarfs her in power. She has to use politics to stop her rivals, because her enemies are powerful enough that removing them would create even more suspicion. First is Carlotina Erewhon, the much put-upon elven princess that Synn is targeted for destruction. Her brother Quinaldor was originally tasked with stopping the humanoids of the Broken Lands, but with the Great Crater, now he has to try to contain their raids from there. The fact that Synn denies the raids are happening and blocks all demands for assistance has made Quinaldor rather suspicious of her, despite him having no idea what she actually is. Still, if he can find evidence that Princess Hillsbury is actively harming another principality, the Glantrian Parliament would be thrown into turmoil. Of course, there's Prince Haldemar of Hacken, her old foe. He knows about her draconic form, but not that she's posing as a Glantrian princess now. He knows how to fight her, has the magic and manpower to bring her down. He does have a few problems, though. First, Alphatians aren't exactly welcome in Glantri after the war and all. Second, Alphatia has much bigger problems. The Wrath timeline, Alphatia is gone, and Haldemar is Hollow World, Alphatia's only link to surface Alphatia. In 1005, Alphatia's military has been decimated by the war, and rebuilding their empire takes precedence over hunting down a shape-changing dragon on another continent. Her immediate rivals and the most obvious threats come from the form of the werewolf princes of Glantri. After Etienne's disappearance, there was a power struggle for control of House Silaire, with his sister-in-law Isidore defeating Henri. Now Isidore and her husband Richard rule Aveyron, and have discovered strong evidence that Dolores Hillsbury is not what she seems. They have started opposing her in Parliament, which is a serious hindrance to her plans, as while the influence of Clan Alaravan has been crippled, House Silaire is a powerhouse. Adding to their alliance is Prince Malachi du Marais, the newly crowned prince of Morlaix-Malembois, who has run afoul of Synn's plans for Glantri on more than one occasion. The first time was by accident, but now the albino werewolf prince is looking for evidence of Synn's crimes to confront her with at court. Individually, the 3 of them are no match for a greater night dragon. Combined, the greater night dragon would be hard-pressed. The last of her foes is currently missing, and that, of course, is Etienne d'Amberville. Of course, this changes in the events of the module Mark of Amber, where plucky young adventurers get to attend a d'Amberville family reunion, where they have to keep track of 41 named NPCs in a murder mystery, and help Etienne return from his time-locked prison. Like Synn, Etienne leads a double life. In his mortal persona, he's a doddering old headmaster of the Great School of Magic, incredibly powerful, but absent-minded. In his other version, he is the hip, cool, swinging man about the universe, known as Rad. When he returns to Parliament, which he will do so without saying a word, he's going to instantly recognize Synn for what she truly is. Which he would do without saying a word to anyone. He's going to instantly recognize Synn for what she truly is, which leads him to exploding her with a snap of his fingers. Or he could force her to return to her true form in front of everyone. Or just make her return to her true form, and then explode her with a snap of his fingers. I would hate to be a janitor in that place. Thus concludes the video on Synn. She's a high-level villain meant to be thwarted more than defeated. Night dragons prefer treachery to combat anyways, but her arrogance always causes her to make mistakes. That's where the characters come in. Next week we are sailing the Great Blue Beyond, taking a look at the skyships of Mystara. From the homemade wizard builds to the entire Alphatian navy, come back for a rundown of the fastest way to get from point A to point B. Until next time, everything I've ever done, everything I ever do, every place I've ever been, everywhere I'm going to, it's a sin.